Hello Fun Army! Today I wanted to chat about video games, but not just any video games from my childhood, or rather sort of like that starting point of me getting into gaming, and why I actually, when I was thinking about this, I had some discoveries about why I like what I like now, perhaps based on what I liked then. So, I'm not, my long-term memory is shit. So I'm not entirely sure on the correct sequence of events. So I'm going to try and go sort of chronologically by console, and hopefully then things will kind of will fall into place a bit more from that perspective. So my gaming journey started, and already I don't know which was the first piece of this puzzle, but as I say, if we go chronologically by console, one of the first consoles I played on was my grandpa's Atari, and it would have been a very, very early Atari, because you literally just had the console, it had an on-off lever and a cartridge slot, and you just had a joystick with a button. That was literally all there was to it, but it was still quite massive back in the day. And the first games I can really remember playing on that were, I can never remember if it was called like Pong or tennis, but you basically had the white line down the middle of the screen, and then you had like a little white line on this side, a little white line on this side, and a little dot bounces between, and you basically had to hit it back and forth, and you lost if the ball didn't get hit back and sort of went off screen. Surprisingly entertaining / frustrating. Like, you could literally sit there for hours being like, I'm going to win, god damn you. And then obviously the other classic from the Atari phase was Space Invaders. The original Space Invaders. So literally black screen, all white characters at this point. So you had like your little spaceships and your little aliens coming in, and again you're just sat there with your joystick going fire, 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 and they're getting lower, 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 lower. I wasn't very good. I don't know if I had trouble with the joystick or trying to monitor that many things at once. This will perhaps map onto my limited skills at Tetris. Similar thing. So yeah, so that was something that I really enjoyed, and we actually played at my grandpa's house. So we used to go to my grandma and grandpa's every Sunday for a Sunday roast. We'd have roast beef with 2 different types of potatoes. So we'd have new potatoes and roast potatoes, and weirdly at the time I preferred new potatoes, so I'd eat my roast potatoes first and then my new potatoes. Anyway, so yeah, so then there'd either be gaming or cards. So for me, that whole gaming thing was intrinsically linked with family at that point, especially when we come on to the next console with which I had fun times, which was the ZX Spectrum. Now, if you Google image search ZX Spectrum now, you'll see like this little tiny keyboard, and I'm not actually sure which version is which. I thought the little tiny keyboard was the later one. It might have been the earlier one, but I think it was the later one. So the one we had it wasn't quite the size of like a standard computer keyboard now, but it was a longer, thinner keyboard. Why you needed all those keys? Well, I know why you needed all those keys, because you could do programming, and there was literally like, you'd have a manual this fat on just how to connect to your screen and change the whole screen to be like blue or pink or green. You'd be sat there typing in this code, feeling like you were awesome, and you're like, my screen is green. Achievements. Early in life achievements. But it was good fun. We loved it. So that was a shared console between me and my brother. And I was trying to remember which games we had. We definitely had The Hobbit. We had this one called Horace Goes Skiing, which was like a sequel to one called Hungry Hungry Horace, from what I understand. We didn't have that one, but that kind of looked like Pac-Man. And I'm presuming Pac-Man came first. I don't know what the argument is, and if there's any copyright infringement with like the the game style, but yeah, Hungry Hungry Horace just runs around eating little dots, which, you know, Pac-Man does. Interesting, intriguing, one might say. So yes, but anyway, so we had Horace Go Skiing, which was different. And this did actually have some colour to it, a little bit of colour to it. So you sort of had plain white background, which was your snowy mountain, and then you'd have like little moguls, and you'd have little flags, and you basically had to navigate down the hill over the moguls. I can't remember if you actually had to do anything else, or whether you just had to navigate through the flags, past the moguls. I'm so gonna sneeze. There we go. Oh dear. So anyway, so you navigate down through these flags, and I was terrible at it. And because you only had the keyboard, and again, shitty long-term memory, but I think you were literally just you were using like letter keys, literally letter keys. Because with some of these games you could choose the letters, and with some of them it was sort of predetermined, and it was like an X, Y, Z, W, V kind of scenario. But yeah, so you're literally sort of navigating left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. That was all you had to do. I was rubbish at it. I have really poor aim in life and in gaming. Which is why you'll never see me playing anything that's like shooty or involves a bow and arrow. As much as I would love to be awesome with a bow and arrow, I much prefer sword fighting or the martial arts style fighting kind of stuff. So yeah, anyway, so that was Horace Go Skiing, and oh, I should have printed out a picture. Google it, because the character was really creepy looking. There's probably, as always, a story behind it. I don't know what it is. But so it looked roughly sort of human shaped. So it had 2 legs and a body and sort of 2 arm-like shapes. But then it just had these 2 big holes in the chest area. It was sort of like either the 2 big holes were supposed to be eyes, and it was just kind of body and head is one big blob with arms and legs attached. Or, I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, so yeah, I remember wanting to play it a lot and struggling. And for those of you who never had this kind of console, it was a tape deck setup. So you basically had to, there's a whole lot of rewinding tapes, which you had to do in those days with, you know, music as well. So you basically have to load up the tape and you have to wait for it to load. So there's a lot of effort that went into just starting your game. So you really had to like enjoy it and put the effort in once you'd gone through that process. But the real pinnacle for me, and as I sort of hinted at earlier, like a bit of a light bulb moment as to perhaps what led me to what I enjoy now, was the one game I always remember, which is the Oracle's Cave. And look, such an attractive view. Here's my double chin. If I just, okay, look. I don't know if that's backwards. Is that backwards? I'll see if I can turn that around in post. I don't know how to turn that around. So yeah, the Oracle's Cave. And I actually want to see if I can at some point get a printer and that special printer paper where you can do t-shirt transfers, because it'd be so cool to just have like a series of like retro gaming t-shirts and stuff like that. So at the moment I've literally printed this out on normal paper, which is why you might hear me crackling to move about. Yeah, I printed out on normal paper, put double-sided tape on and stuck it onto a t-shirt I already own, which is inside out. Needs must right now, but yes, at some point I might invest in a printer that can print on the transfer paper, because that'd be pretty cool. So yeah, so the thing with Oracle's Cave, I have handouts. I mean, first of all, my beloved crappy printer decided it was going to print 25 of these for no reason whatsoever. And I think the problem is it's a crappy printer, and I actually have a fairly decent computer these days, and you could sort of make it compatible, but not quite. So yeah, it went a bit went a bit doolally this morning. But yes, so I have handouts, which just weirdly reminded me of being at uni. Again, anyone who went to uni sort of, I guess, anywhere after like 2009 or so, you won't be able to relate to this at all, but and actually anyone from the generation before had to handwrite stuff. But during our time, PowerPoint, it did exist, but not many people had access to it. Most people didn't even have their own computer. I hilariously did have a computer, but it was like a massive desktop computer, which, bearing in mind how often you move at uni, and I actually moved 3 times in my first year, and you're going to and from home as well, because you don't necessarily stay there for the whole year. I just carted around this massive desktop computer for years. And I did have a printer as well, but I was one of very few. Interestingly, actually, there were a few in my own household, so quite often we were helping other people out. But yeah, most people didn't have a computer, and if you did, it would be a desktop. So laptops did exist, and actually another of my early gaming experiences was on my dad's very early laptop, which wasn't full colour, so it was just variations of blue, I think. So yeah, we played what did we play on that? There was an Olympics game, and I think probably very early Sim Farm and Sim City, although I seem to remember playing those in colour, but maybe that was later. But yeah, we definitely played the Olympics game on the all blue laptop. Anyway, digression. Yeah, so laptops not really a thing. So when it came to having to present things in seminars, we had to use an overhead projector. So you would have your OHP slides. So literally you'd have to either draw, so actually get OHP pens and draw on these slides and then put them on the overhead projector, which beamed stuff onto the wall. Or if you were super awesome and clever or had the right printer at home, you might be able to print on those OHP special slides, and then use those. But yeah, most people had to draw on them. So then yeah, if you did have stuff that you could print, people would have to go to the library or the computer room, print that out, and then have physical handouts. I just, even in my, and obviously we are focusing on video gaming, but just the depths of the technology changes just in my own lifetime. I'm 38, I'm not old, but just in that space of time, so much has changed. To have a device in your hand that does all of these things that you just couldn't do even when I was at university is insane. Anyway, massive digression. Let's come back to Oracle's Cave. So, can you see that? There we go. This is the loading screen you used to get whilst your tape was dialing up. So, as you can see, and in fairness, these are pretty good graphics for the time. Built on very basic computer programming, so really pretty cool. And oh, here we go. This is basically what the gameplay looked like. So you had a series of these sort of tunnels and cave areas, and you literally just walked left or right. And you controlled it, as you can see down here. There were either options that were numbers, or you had options of blah letter or blah letter. It was very, very basic. Again, you were just using that keyboard. And do you know what made me laugh about this? It actually just, and this is where I already started to see the parallels. So forgetting the game for a moment, which I will explain the concept of, this says, what does it say? How many hours do you wish to rest? And that's such a massive part of these RPG type games that we play these days, where it's sort of, you can go out and you can fight and you can use potions or eat food to regain health, or you can go and rest. And that's exactly what this was. So you would pick a period to rest. However, this whole game was time limited, if I remember correctly. So actually you had to be very careful about how long you chose to rest after a battle. So the basic concept of this game is that you had, I think, 4 big baddies, and they are blocking the exit to the cave. I can't remember how you got into the cave or if they told you why you were in the cave, but basically you're stuck in a cave, and you have to then pick one of 4 different baddies to get past, one of which is the Oracle of Oracle's Cave fame. And that's how you complete the game, how you win the game, is that you're able to go through a series of obstacles and beat the Oracle, or whichever. Actually, I don't know if, maybe you just had one big baddie, but the Oracle was always the end point. I'm not sure I ever won the game, to be honest. I can't really remember, so forgive me on the, on the failings of the plot point, but ultimately you basically had a series of challenges to get through, and then you'd have a final monster you needed to get past. And the sort of the entire gameplay was just press a button on the keyboard which said how you were going to respond to a thing that came up on screen. And it seems so bizarre to think about it like that now, but that's what it was, and I loved it. This was like my favourite game ever, even though I clearly can't remember if I ever beat it. But it just something about it. So I've got more handouts. So I think it also reminded me of that children's TV program Nightmare, where it's like you're in a room and you've got various objects and it's like, oh, what can help me in this scenario? So here's a good example. It says, you meet a dragon guarding some gold ingots and some wine. Now what? And that was literally the style of gameplay for this kind of game. I think The Hobbit was fairly similar, actually. It's just like, here's a scenario. What are you gonna do? There you are as like, you know, primary school age child, like, and you just have to pick a letter to determine. So this is like, options are M or F. I think F stood for food, or it might have stood for fight in a particular scenario. Because sometimes it was like fight or run, so F or R. Like it's, let me show you this. So look, see, pretty good dragon really. And there's the gold ingot and there's the wine goblets. What else have we got? Oh, so you meet a vampire bat. They seem to, the pictures I found seem to be really focused on the same shit. You meet a vampire bat guarding some gold ingots and some food. Now what? Options are M or F. Like, I'm not gonna lie to you, like, vampires are quite scary, but this scared the shit out of me when I was younger. Can you see that? Okay. Like, what? Literal zooming in, I'm sticking it right in your face. Like, how scary is that? That was really scary to me. Oh, and that one's actually like a lot of like creepy mushrooms in early gaming. What else have we got? Oh, here we go, something different. Oops. The downside of handouts is everything falls over. Centaur's Den. Ooh. Interesting. I missed that on the other one. So we had, so maybe the centaur is one of the, I guess, challenges. Centaur, mummy, knight's hall. Maybe there's a dark knight. Centaur. Yeah, so maybe one of the 4 routes is centaur and one is mummy and one is knight. I have to look that up. Anyway, so this one says, you meet a spectre guarding some silver bars and an axe. Now what? It still also says options are M or F. Maybe it's move or fight? Like, again, I never understood this drawing at all. Can I? There we go. That's a spectre. I guess there's only so much you can do with basic computing to sort of establish, like, woo. Oh, but that's hilarious. And then this, right, this is hilarious. So there was like a Cyclops, and there was a centaur, and there were, I think, a couple of other characters that you meet. But this is the Oracle. Now, I'm just like, surely this is the Oracle. Surely this is just an octopus, like a cycloptic octopus. But you can see there, look, he's got a goblet of wine and an out. So if you made it past him, you could get out of here. Oh, and look, that's a rope. So yeah, sometimes, so I totally lied to you. It's actually, I'd forgotten, it's not just move left or move right. If you came across a rope, you could go up or down, depending on where the rope was. So I've lost myself in this whole story, so I hope you're following. But it was such a fun game, and it's always the first thing I think about when I think about the ZX Spectrum. And when I genuinely look at the books, the movies, the games that I like to play now, it's all this kind of fantasy type genre. It's that kind of gameplay where it's sort of like, oh, you come across a challenge, how are you going to manage the challenge? You know, and you might have a sword or some magic. Yeah, I'm really not, aside from the fact that I'm not very good at aiming, you know, I'm not really into things where you're shooting or racing or any of that kind of thing. I like that story engagement, and that really is reflected in everything that I like in my life. So yeah, very interesting. I think, I'm not sure if this is what sparked that spark or whether that's why I remember it so well. But yes, anyway, so to move on from the ZX Spectrum, so did I talk about this? With the tape deck loading, the one thing that was classically known about, I think, pretty much all of the consoles that had this tape deck loading at the time, was the whole thing of, obviously, as I say, you had to rewind the tape once it had been loaded, and if you hadn't rewound it, you then had to spend time rewinding it when you wanted to start your next gaming session. And so you'd be like, loading, you sit there for, like, it felt like half an hour. I don't know if it was actually that long, maybe it was more like 10, 15 minutes or so, but like a significant portion of time you had to load this tape, and you'd be looking at a loading screen. That loading screen wouldn't move or change, because again, basic computing. So yeah, you're waiting, and then it either gets to the end of its loading process, and then you get to start playing the game, or it says error or loading fail, and you're just like, like, it was the worst pain you've ever experienced. Like, imagine that moment where, like, you've been working on something for several hours and then your computer crashes and you've lost your document. Like, that level of pain. And then you'd have to go through the process again with no guarantee that it's gonna work this time either. Like, oh my God, very painful, very painful. So I guess, yes, whilst we're on the tape deck thing, my dad also had a Sharp computer. Now, I don't really know what, I guess, classic kind of games were available for it, because he mostly bought, in classic dad fashion, educational games. So there was one that had like the Towers of Hanoi. So you basically had 3 pillars and a load of rings in various different orders, and you had to move the rings between these 3 pillars to get it so that it went from largest to smallest. Weirdly challenging and entertaining despite being educational. Equally weirdly entertaining and slightly educational was, there was like this history game. So I can't remember if it was just kings and queens kind of history, but I mainly remember that I feel like you sort of moved through a situation and then it would ask you questions. Either that or I'm merging 2 games together in my head. I basically remember there being a gazooks correct if you got a question right. It might be I'm merging 2 together. I feel like, because with the Kings and Queens stuff, there was a whole process of learning you had to go through before you then went through these challenges of it asking you questions about the Kings and Queens. And then, yeah, the thing I remember is going through lots of doors and meeting monsters and gazooks correct. I don't know. Anyway. Gaming was weird back then. Lots of puzzles and solving things. I think there were a load of like BMX games, and some early fighting games, but they maybe came with slightly later series of these things. So again, that was all keyboard based. What else was I going to say about that kind? I think that was it for that era. So then the next sort of stage of gaming that I really remember. Oh no, there is another one. So at primary school, in the early days of computing, we had what was literally just called a BBC computer. So again, a screen and a keyboard, that's all you had. And I don't remember what the name of the game was, but there was basically this elephant, and your mission was to create a sling for this elephant and pick it up and move it across and put it down. It was literally the entire aim of the game. I think, to be honest, it was one of those that was built for schools, so that you could start to understand how computing worked. So yeah, but again, weirdly entertaining, but you're literally just using keyboard keys to move things around. And I'm not sure if that was like mega massive floppy disk. I don't think that was tape load. I think that was massive floppy disk. God, I've been through so much technology in my time. So yeah, so then the next thing I remember, which is quite a step up from all of those things, is when both me and my brother got Game Boys. Now this was original Game Boy. So original Game Boy, if you've never played one, had all green screen. So not like green screen as we would know the term now, but much like I was talking about my dad's laptop that was sort of different shades of blue, this was different shades of green. So there was no colour to the screen, it was just sort of a slightly greenish background, and then you had like these, in some cases just line drawn characters, but like lots of shading and stuff like that. And we had loads of Game Boy games. And one of the coolest things about Game Boy, because I don't think up until this point we really had any two-player games, was that you could get a connector cable that would connect your Game Boy to someone else's Game Boy so that you could play against each other. And this was a revelation, because yeah, there's only 2 years between me and my brother, and we grew up together. So there was a lot of bants and competition, and it was difficult if you were playing a one-player game for the person who was not playing to not die of boredom or want to distract the other one or whatever. So yeah, having a Game Boy each and then having this connect cable. So there weren't huge amounts of games that you could play two-player on, but the key one was Tetris, which I think it came with the Game Boy, and I don't know if it was like that was your starter pack deal that was most commonly available, or whether it just came as standard with the Game Boy at the time. But everybody had Tetris. So I'd not only played with my brother, but actually one of my close friends at the time also got a Game Boy, so we could have like these little Tetris tournaments. But because you were cabled, and the cables were not long, and it was not the kind of time period where you could just go into a shop and get a much longer cable. You literally had to be sat facing each other, and you could imagine with a brother, we literally would just kick each other if one was beating the other. It'd be like, I'm just going to kick you to try and distract you whilst you're beating me. So yeah, like those were like, I just have very distinct visions of sitting on my tiny little bed with me here and my brother here, and then just kicking each other while I'm trying to play Tetris, and then the Tetris music getting stuck in your head forever. Anyway. So the Game Boy was also one of my first real experiences of Mario World. And I think I actually had Mario 1, Mario 2, Mario 3, and some other kind of Mario. We had Kirby's Dream Land, all kinds of random things. Mortal Kombat, that was also like my first introduction to Mortal Kombat and Crazy Combat games. So that was another one that me and my brother played connected. So he always liked to play Scorpion, and I always liked to play Sub-Zero, which again, forgive me, I'm not an expert on the Mortal Kombat canon, but I believe... See, I used to think they were brothers, but I think something happened to Scorpion. No, is it that way around? Something happened to Scorpion, and Sub-Zero is basically some kind of mirror image double of Scorpion. So Scorpion was fire and Sub-Zero was ice, so much as his name implied. So a lot of what he did was freeze people, and that was one of my favourite moves, it'd be like freeze. And that was really the days when you had to sort of learn combos. So you had your A, B button and you had your up, down, left, right, and you had to figure out and learn these combos to do special moves, basically. And sometimes you'd do it by accident because you're just rolling around these buttons trying to kick the crap out of your partner. And I remember we both ended up getting our different form of like Game Boy holder, so that if we were going somewhere you could have your Game Boy in the car, and you'd take a few games with you and stuff like that. And we'd have like these sheets of paper where we'd written down these combos that we'd found out, or like my brother had bought Game Boy magazine or something, and it would give you secret combos which you maybe hadn't figured out, you know, before the internet was a thing. We had to buy magazines to find out information, and sometimes that was once a month. Oh god, yeah. So yeah, I remember having all these combos and things to learn. But yeah, Scorpion, his finisher, he had like this chain with I'm not sure if it was a hook or like an arrow on the end, but yes, it would like fly out and rip your head off, which was awesome. Early violence. Yeah, so Game Boy time was like quality time. Like that was a good portion of my childhood. So at that point, so sort of between us having the ZX Spectrum and the Game Boy, we never really had then a bigger console. At that point, consoles started to become really expensive. And Tim and I were always trying to like pool our money to buy stuff. So everything we did buy ended up being shared from that perspective. But yeah, we sort of got priced out of consoles for a while. So I had experienced the original NES when my brother and I used to go up to our nan's for Christmas. My mum's youngest brother is actually quite a bit younger because she's the eldest of 5. So he had a Nintendo and he still lived at my nan's house at the time. So yeah, when, again, must have been somewhere across the sort of primary school, early secondary school period. Yeah, we'd go up to my nan's for Christmas, and like one of the big treats was that we got to play on our uncle's Nintendo. So I finally got to play Mario in colour, which was very exciting. But of course you couldn't save in those days, so it was always a massive pressure of just like trying to get through this as far as you can before you're like summoned to dinner or something like that. And it's quite a long game, especially if you only get to play it like once a year. And when you die, you have to go back to the beginning. God, yeah, like that just seems an age away. That was really scary. And then interestingly, we would go to one of my mum's other brothers' houses on Boxing Day usually, and they had lots of kids. So they actually had, I think it was Sega Mega Drive. So that was then my first experience of Sonic, and I was like, ooh, this is so cool. Like it was new and shiny and different. Like I'd had a lot of experience with Mario in different guises, but yeah, I had not experienced Sonic before, so this was very exciting. But again, we only got to, and obviously that was a much shorter period because you're dealing with a bunch of kids all wanting to kind of play on this, and I didn't really want to play in front of everybody else in case they judged me. But yeah, so I definitely realised at that point I had a love of that platform style gaming, but I like that mixture of sort of challenges and fighting baddies. Like if I've got too much of one or too much of the other, oh no, the oracle's come unstuck. Yeah, too much of one or too much of the other, I can get a bit bored or frustrated. Yeah, really at that point, that was our only sort of big console experience. Until a few years later when both me and my brother had saved up and we bought together a Sega Saturn, which for any gamers watching, you're probably like, like it didn't go down well, and I'm not really sure the reason why, to be honest. It may be that I'm not sure if that came out around the time of the original PlayStation, perhaps, so by comparison it was quite inferior. I don't remember what Nintendo had out at the time, but this was like our first big proper console, you know, bearing in mind the last console we had was the Spectrum ZX. And then this is our first proper one, and it actually had like a disk drive. So we've sort of bypassed cartridges and tapes and all of that, and suddenly disk drive. Dun 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 dun. And being Sega, obviously we had some Sonic games, so I was able to play the games then that I'd played with my cousins on the Mega Drive. We also had like some more advanced games where you went from that platform thing of going left to right across a screen, or right to left in some cases, to running in 3D, as I like to call it. So there was one, well, a number of games that we had, but one in particular where my brother just laughed at me because I was so used to platform style gaming that I just didn't know how to run in 3D. Sometimes I still struggle with it. But like, it's fine with the like open world games that I play because you don't generally fall off shit, but like with something like so we had, it was called Supersonic Racing. So you've got Sonic. You know that Sonic's big thing is that he sort of does all these loop-de-loops, and he has all these loop-de-loops. So when you suddenly go from having that in a left-right thing where all you have to do is just spin round, you can't go wrong, to doing that in 3D where actually if you don't line yourself up properly or you press the joystick at the wrong moment, you go flying out of the ring. That was me. Like, I couldn't grasp the concept of going from like left to right to running in 3D. And so yeah, even now, to be honest, I still struggle a little bit with any game like that where you have to be precise in 3D. So like Mario Kart, I'm pretty shit at. I also don't have a console. Do I have? No, I don't think I have a console on which I could play something like Mario Kart where you're trying to avoid obstacles in 3D and things are bouncing at you and you've got to like sort of run forward and not fall off and da-da-da. Like I still find that a bit of a strange concept. I think my brain is just so programmed to the kind of games that I used to play that I can't quite get my head around it. So I prefer the open world games. And that's another interesting point, just to, I guess, jump ahead a little bit. With those open world games, fortunately, nowadays you mostly have a choice as to whether you sort of have a first person view or a third person view. And I simply cannot play in first person view. I'm like, I just feel so discombobulated and dizzy and like I don't know what's going on. I have to be able to see my character and see where they're going. And I think it's a similar thing with the 3D running. I just feel like out of control and a bit weird. Oh God. So yeah, like there were lots of things to play on the Sega Saturn. We had lots of racing games because my brother enjoys that kind of thing. As I say, we had quite a lot of Sonic. What else did we have? We had like, oh yeah, I tell you what, so more of a classic style game. I think there are several around a similar theme that have different names depending on who produced them, but we had Saturn Bomberman, where literally you're playing against each other or against the computer, and it sort of looks like a Pac-Man style setup, like that kind of maze style screen, but the aim is ultimately to like kill the other person with bombs, so you're sort of running around and planting bombs and just blowing up the other person, and that's literally all you're doing. And I can't even remember if there are other obstacles to avoid. It might be like the mazes get a bit more complicated, but yeah. So still sort of some more, I guess, awesome original concept style games that we had to play there. And that, to be honest, was the last sort of big console I owned for a very long time. Oh, sorry, I'm gonna have to go and shut the blind. Like, I'm being blinded. I'm sure it's like screwing with the lighting as well. I'm back. So, yeah, that was like the last console I owned really until, when did I get my Xbox 360? I'm not sure if I was in my 20s or in my 30s, but there was a significant time period during which like I went off to uni, and all of that kind of jazz. I did, during that period, like later uni period, laptops started to become a bit more commercially viable for a student. Well, actually, I think I bought it when I was on my placement year, so that was like the 3rd year of my degree, so I was earning a salary at that point. So I think I might have had like the first PC Harry Potter game on that one. And that was good fun because, again, it was about solving puzzles and you got to do magic spells. So, yes, because that whole thing where Malfoy steals Neville's Remembrall, you had to catch Malfoy and not literally knock him off his broom and then catch the Remembrall. You had to do the potions challenge that you have just before Harry finds finds Professor Quirrell to find the Philosopher's Stone. So it's that, yes, Professor Snape's potions challenge that he sets as part of the things you have to get through to get to the Philosopher's Stone. So I think I probably had the first Harry Potter game and I think the second one. But as still happens now, very quickly the games being released were too much for the specs on my laptop. And it was not the sort of thing you could easily upgrade back then, or certainly with the money and capability I had access to. So yeah, I think I had bought and returned a couple of the games. I seem to remember having 4, but that might have been, I got the other 2 later when I had upgraded my laptop. Some years after that, probably when I was working full time again. But yeah, so that was literally all I had then in between. I think I'd even at that point managed to do DOS boxing on the laptop so I could play like Lemmings. Lemmings! I completely bypassed Lemmings. Oh my god, where have I been? I don't know, PC gaming, despite the fact that, you know, I grew up with these gaming setups that had keyboards and you literally, or keyboard was all you had. For some reason, I discount PC gaming. I'm focused on consoles. It's really weird. But yeah, I can't believe I forgot about Lemmings. So yeah, there were 1 or 2 games that cropped up on whatever version of PC we had available. So I remember playing Lemmings actually in the school computer room when I was at secondary school. But I do think we also had a copy at home, but we would have only been able to play it at my dad's house because we didn't have a PC at home at that point. Yeah, Lemmings. I'm sure there was another one around, well, again, SimCity and Sim Farm. We definitely played a lot of that early on, again, only when we were at dad's. And the Olympics game, which had multiple discs. God, that was the thing. If you had a big game at that point, so prior to there being CD-ROMs, you had like the small floppy disks. So yeah, if you had a big game, you had to load it up with like 4 or 5 of these discs. So load first disc, insert second disc, insert second disc, insert third disc. Wowzers. Oh my goodness. So yeah, I tried to do it chronologically. I sort of achieved it, but yeah, so, you know, I had an Xbox 360 then as an adult. I don't believe in adulting. And I now have an Xbox One. Now, let me be very clear here because I know there is a debate. I don't have anything against PlayStation. I've just never played one. So I don't like change. So I tend to just go with, I know how to use this. So I'm gonna just upgrade that because I know how to use it and it's not going to tax my brain too much. And also, and I, you know, again, don't know if PlayStation do this because I know very little about it. But one of the awesome things is I have games for the original Xbox, because my brother had an original Xbox which I borrowed for a while. Games for the original Xbox which you could play on the Xbox 360 because they made them backwards compatible. And then I've got all these 360 games which I can play on my Xbox One because they made them backwards compatible, which is really awesome, to be honest. And again, that I love that just makes life easier. and it's not that you have to like keep changing console around, or that, you know, shit gets a bit old and then you can't play it anymore. So no, I'm really grateful for the fact that it does that. So yeah, the games I play now, as I say, very similar to the ones I've always played. You know, I like anything in the Elder Scrolls zone, so Oblivion, Skyrim. I've recently just finished playing Witcher 3. I love the Fable series, Dragon Age, like Shadow of Mordor. Anything that kind of combines the magic swordplay open world situation, I really enjoy. There are probably lots of other games I would also enjoy, but I don't really go outside of that genre very often. And those are the games I tend to get lost in, and I'm prepared to spend a lot of time on. You know, I don't have huge amounts of time for other things, and so many things that I want to do within that time. So yeah, I tend to gravitate towards the same thing. And, you know, if you love it, you love it. Like, this is the whole point at the end of the day. So there I was, full on into an awesome wrap up, and my battery died. How long have I been talking? Also, you'll notice I've changed direction, because even though I've pulled the blind down, the sun was coming through in the gap in the blind, and I was, my eyes, my retina. So I was talking about that the whole point really of my mission 100% fun, and this video talking about my gaming life, is to focus in on what brings the joy, what brings the fun, what sparks those awesome memories. So, you know, I just don't see the point in doing shit that you don't want to do at the end of the day. Life is to be lived, doing things that you enjoy. And the spirit behind Mission 100% Fun is that I up the percentage of my time doing those things that I enjoy, and that I help you unlock the key to upping the percentage of your time spent doing things that you enjoy as well. So, talking of enjoyment, I hope you've enjoyed this video, exploring into my gaming life, but I really want to hear about your gaming life. What games did you grow up with? I got lots of friends here who I know had Ataris or Commodore 64s and things like that, so I'd really love to hear what games you were playing, what experiences you had, and just enjoy all the gaming nostalgia, because yeah, gaming is awesome. It was awesome then, and it's still awesome now. So thanks for watching, Fun Army, and I'll talk to you all later. Bye!